Hello, everybody. Welcome to another session of Gaming with Blockchain. I'm A. and we're going to be discussing at least getting an understanding of why I'm into the whole wax and EOS blockchain primarily. What is it that I like about it? And help you understand if you're looking to get on board and it's probably not making much sense. What kind of the workings behind the whole system and the whole network. What we're looking at right now is the big picture of the EOSIO blockchain. It comprises of many other coins underneath its umbrella, coins like Wax and EOS, but it's fundamentally under the EOSIO chain. Now, why do I like this? It's simple. It's simple. It's simple. As simply as that. It's one of the few projects that I've seen as trying to make onboarding as frictionless as possible, as removing as many obstacles as it can, and at the same time knowing that they have to adjust and work around these fees. Now, I'm not talking about fees from the transitional sense. I'm talking about fees from a resource sense. Now, I'm not looking to compare ETH and ADA and all these other chains against each other. Every chain has its pros and cons. Every chain has its really attractive projects within them. But what I'm trying to emphasize more about is the ability to scale, the ability to distribute the allocation of what the costs of resources are and better manage that. And I think from that standpoint, I find anything on the EOSIO project to be the most beneficial where that's concerned. And you've probably heard about all the back talk with the BP and the block producers and Google and how the projects are not scaling. Again, unfortunately, that is the drawbacks of some of these early developments. It doesn't always go according to plan. It's unknown what the future is going to be like. We're still in a very speculative nature of the beast of how things are going to move along. But what I do like about this project, it encompasses very vast markets and very vast players and participants. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I still have a bit of a cold. Thought I would get rid of it by now, and it's still lingering. But I'll coin this right now. The issue is why I'm doing this is because if you divide a day in three, every 8 hours equals one full day in crypto. So if I'm going to bed, that's 24 hours gone. If you're going to work, that's 24 hours gone. So trying to get you guys up to date as we move along and try to get all these projects in place. Doesn't mean I don't even have other projects. I do have assets in other chains, but as a ecosystem, I find EOSIO to be one of the stronger ones. And you can see they have Google Cloud is coming on board or has been on board. They're probably the ones closest to meeting the regulatory guidelines for the U.S. and likely span across globally. So this is one of the main reasons why I'm liking how this project is moving along. It's going to be not just centralized and decentralized. I've stated this before. It's really hard to have complete extremes and be successful. We already have the extreme poor and extreme rich, and you can see they're constantly at odds. What we need to do is find a good median, and this is what we will probably be looking to achieve here, or EOSIO is looking to achieve, where it's a hybrid. And I think the hybrids are always going to be the best solutions moving forward. But what the question would be moving from that is what would that ratio be? 70-30, 60-40, 90-10. That remains unknown. But this is what I do like about it, and because it could bring a vast scale of players, a vast scale of participants, it's not as hindering to a new person, a new player, a new person of interest into the project. So what is the hang up? What does all this resources mean. And this is one of the things that a lot of new people that come on board, they're struggling to find, they're struggling to understand. And so I'm going to try to bring this in. I'm trying to bring in a bit more information. I'm not going to get into details of the EOSIO. I just want to show you the main page and what the whole EOS SIO network is like. And you can put that in the show notes so that you can always go back and you can do some more research and do your own D&D. But I'm just trying to give you the basis and the base points of why I'm more bullish in these particular projects. So each project, like ETH, and I'm going to do a comparison to ETH, I'm going to do a comparison bit to Bitcoin, any other project, any blockchain project. The key element that's the struggle right now is resource. It's the resources, and if you're old enough, as old as I am, or you know enough about computer systems or anything else, it's resources. Everything is based on resources, and right now computers have become the cost of the resources in terms of managing. They're the new tool. Before, something we were kind of passive. We didn't know, moving into from the industrial era to the digital era, how important the computer network or computer systems will impact our lives. And now we're seeing it as more computation requirements are needed, or more hard drive space is needed, and more or faster transaction speeds needed. All these things take a resource allocation to some regard. So ETH, and like most traditional banking systems or even manufacturing, anything where the resource, if there's a cost that increases, that resource cost is marked up and then automatically transferred to the end user. You don't have a say in it. I don't have a say in the fees that my bank charges me. I don't have the say of the materials that are bought. If I need to buy raw materials for something, those fees are automatically transferred down, and you don't have a say in the markup. You don't have a say in anything. There's no controls, so you don't know if there's even justifiable for the markup cost. It's unknown. But in the blockchain, these resources are real. It's no different than resources for a server, for Visa server, Google server, Apple server, Disney Plus, Netflix, whatever it stores data, your government servers. Your computer system that you're watching this on right now is a resource. It's a tool right now. It's taking resources for you to see it, to navigate on your hard drive. All these are requirement. So if new users get a understanding of what that is, then I'm hoping you'll be able to then understand what the cost would be and why I find EOSIO the better choice in this particular element. Not saying you can't stay with other chains. I mean, like I said, I have assets in other chains, but in terms of everyday transaction, everyday use, I think EOS has a slight edge. Now, if you're the type of person who has enough of discretionary income, this is not going to matter. Like, if you want to pay fees, you're going to pay fees. It means nothing. This expense won't tailor or affect your bottom line. But for the 98% of the users, especially if you're looking to apply mass adoption, this may be important. This may be impactful. So what does it all mean? So like I said, this is all the resource. So you can see from this article, they're explaining what should these 3 resources are applied in the EOS system. Now, they're going to be changing this gradually. They're looking to improve it. Like, again, that's the best thing. Looking to improve how this allocation works over time. This is an article that was issued back in 2018, so about a year and a half old. But the same 3 elements are applied, same thing that you need to do. So you can see what CPU and net is, and how one has to do with transaction, and one has to do with time of that transaction. And then you'll see at the bottom here where they mention RAM, and RAM is the temporary, or say the storage element of your assets. Okay, so you have the time, and you have the transaction of itself, and then you have the temporary storage of these assets. So if I'm looking at I'll click here at the top, and maybe you see it, and this is my usage right now. This is telling me just on every computer I use this is a software called iStat. This is telling me my allocation. So if I had to download something, it be it an update for my application or be an update for the OS that I'm on, it's going to require the transaction. So to get it from one server to the next, so how fast that transaction is depending on my bandwidth. Then it's going to require the space to temporarily store that transaction, or say the time to store it before it goes to my hard drive. So I have to have enough RAM to store this download, the speed at which I want to do it, and the transaction network between which peers I'm utilizing. Until all that process is done, then it could get to my hard drive and it could be stored there. But you'll see, if you looked at anything of your systems, you'll see where things start to peak. It will start to, if I had to download something, you'll see those high ratios of that grid, and things start to spike. It's because the resources are being utilized and they're trying to do it within a timeline that it makes most sense. No different if you look at animation. If you had to do an animation or computations for a a sequence in science, or allocation on any other heavy resource of data, that's what those resources are. This is what's taking cost or causing the cost issues in a lot of the blockchain, and EOS is trying to find ways in which to distribute that differently. Here's this another example, again explaining what this is a bit more, and you can see they've used the allocation analogy from old day computers and computer system. Same process. We've now become, in the beginning we never knew or never understood how important that our computers will be utilized, and now they are very important. That's why sometimes you'll see people maybe 2 or 3 computers. They're merging the processing power in order to finish a particular task a little faster or quicker if you need be. So these are the reasons why the resources on the network has its implications on cost. And again, this is not service net fees as you would see traditionally from a bank or from an institution that wants to charge you a fee for this and a fee for that and a fee for that. You look at it, you look at your invoice, and there's fees for everything, and then there's a markup. God knows what the markup is. This is primarily I would say 95% of the time the network fees. You'll still have a transaction fee again from peer to peer, a certain fee for that transaction itself, and that's part of your net, but everything is very minimal in comparison. So I just did a transaction on Bitcoin. That transaction fee cost me, again, it's not significant, but cost me far more than would have cost me on Wax or EOS. So this is a reason why, and I'll show a bit more. So what EOS is doing is that right now these fees are shared by the user. I now have to control this of how my resources are utilized. So I'm going to go into the Wax cloud here so we can see what the resources are about. So I touched a bit about this before, but I'm going to show a bit more and try to showcase more information to it. This is how much RAM I have. This is basically the RAM, because the resources that I have in my wallet it's taken up about 44% of the capacity. Now I've offloaded some just to provide to another friend who's going to be doing a little bit of crafting on a particular project, but that's what's stored right now. So the more I add to my wallet, the higher this capacity level is going to be. So I can add another bit of more RAM. I could buy a bit more RAM to reduce that price, percentage a bit more, but it's going to be insignificant in terms, because it's based on bytes. The values are based on minor costs. So let's say if I wanted to, and I wanted to buy RAM here, and I will say I want to buy 1 RAM worth. Let's see if it does anything here. I have to OK it, put my approval, and don't know if it went through. let's see, refresh. Oops. I'm gonna have to go back and see. I don't want to refresh and then lock myself out, because I do know one of these. So there we go. So we had to refresh, and you see I reduced it. So that one wax, which is 0.002 cents of value, perhaps, just reduced my by 2%. So I've gained 2% more capacity in my assets, in my folders. The CPU, again, these two resources now are regenerative. So if I use them because I'm doing a lot of transactions, I'm transfer something, or I'm purchasing something, these will increase. But like a download, after the transaction's done, after it's finished, they will reset, and the capacity now has lowered. So usually you want your capacity to be low, but you also want to have enough in case of the time you need to spike, and times you need to utilize a lot. So if you're a heavy transaction person, or you're buying a lot of NFTs, or you're trading a lot of NFTs, or you're selling a lot of NFTs, you want to keep eye on these resources. But at the same time, then you can manage them with very little waste in terms of just injection of dollars. It's just a lot easier to do. Now, what would that mean? So as this volume continues to grow, like these dApps have been increasing, all these projects are adding on. I'll be going into some projects tomorrow's launch. I can now manage. I could put in my wax, and I could go, okay, how can I be careful to make sure that I'm not getting to the closest edge of my resource point. So no different than your hard drive. You don't want to have a hard drive, and then you have a 500, let's say 500 gig hard drive, and then you're down to maybe 15. Oops, you're running low, you're getting very tight. You have to find a ways in which to either expand that or offload some of those assets. And sometimes what people are doing, I started doing it myself, I'm splitting my wallet now. So I'm creating additional wallets to shift key assets if I wanted. It's a pros and cons. You have to be able to manage it strategically, but again, it helps as these projects grow, because all these projects, the intention of them is to grow. So will your asset portfolio, so will the stuff you have in store. So it's something to manage, something to watch for, something to kind of gauge and pay attention to. So I'm hoping this is giving you a bit more understanding. So I look back now to Atomic. Remember, this is the collection base, and this is everybody now, verified and not verified. If I were to buy a bit of each of these projects, that my RAM will start to drop. And then depending on how quickly I'm buying these, my net and my CPU will start to fluctuate as well. And if I wait enough of a time, my CPU will drop, but not necessarily my RAM, because now I added a percentage into my RAM unless I buy more RAM. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be a lot. I'm touching base on it because we're going to lead into other things as well. I'm just trying to make sure that people get a feel and they really can appreciate why I'm very, very attracted to the EOS. We'll at one point get to the NFT creator. I'll try to do something that's very, very more detailed on how to create this. I'll probably go through a walkthrough as I'm building one. But the setup I have to do a little differently, because that's on a different wallet, and that's where that particular asset class is. And so we'll have to kind of plan that in a different manner. So now, what's about the EOS and what's changing here? So now we have the wallet. We have one particular wallet. We can see where that wallet is. This is just one of the asset classes of where you can find everything, and basically everything's tied to that. So we had shown what other wax portfolios have been like, and I'll show two more. And I'll log in here. Confirm. So you see it goes always back to the Wax Cloud wallet, is associated there. It's also tied to the Atomic asset, which was this one as well. So everything's built on the assets of Atomic assets, which is tied to the Wax wallet, but then you have other services, other asset explorers that can offer and display the information differently, or even offer more information in ways that atomic asset does not. So you have these ultimate options as well to go through and navigate and see, because when you're doing these collectibles, there's a lot of things you want to look at. You want to look at rarity. So if I look at Alien Worlds, because this is the two projects that we've been touching on. I understand. I can now go in and I can look at these rarity classes specifically, not in my particular wallet, not in my wallet, but what's in the market, what's available in the market right now, what's being sold, how the price points have changed. So if I look at just at the mystical and the details, only that's the only category I selected, I can see all the ones that are mystical, all the ones that are for sale, and you can see how these price points have changed, or what they're like. So in comparison, when there's some that say all the price points are small in this particular market, it really depends on the buyer, and that's why I said it's a very vast spread in volume, not so much volume, but in value. So if I look at the lowest value right now, let's see if I go to the lowest price point. Excuse me. And go to, let's see. Oops. Nope. Plant. So that's the difference here. Atomic acid, I could go to mystical. Let's see if I could do the mystical. Alien Worlds. And I can do rarity here. I'm going to do lowest price. So I'm just doing the comparison. So you can see here, level bow is a first selection, level bow is a first selection, 35 wax, and then go back to atomic, 35 wax. So you can see how they kind of display the information differently, how you have different attributes that you can draw from or extract. There's another one I'm not too familiar that just came into the market. And they're just new. I'm not going to log in because again, I'm not familiar with their system just yet. It's something that they just brought on board. But how they display their information is different. And what I like about this one here, it shows you a whole line. So if this was just a release earlier in the week, and if you're a collector and you want to know the stages of these collections, you can see what these collections will mean and how the value basis will be. So you have right here 7 of this whole line of Chung Li, that if you're a collector and you want each of these how to say cards in each stage, this is what you will ultimately have to do. And you have to keep in mind that some of these are also animated. You're not seeing the animation, of course, but that's the whole scope. They have their leaderboard. If you're part of that whole leaderboard dynamic, they've included that on this particular stage. They have different brands of how their market page is set up. So it's all these different values in how these platforms contribute to the NFT market within the EOS system, and they're all part of, again, the Wax cloud, or Wax itself. So if you wanted to and you have an account on Anchor, which I do, I could log into my Anchor account. It will show me what my assets are there, and then I navigate in all these different spaces through that particular account. When they're going to bring in EOS, the EOS network systems are coming as well. EOS is going to have their share of NFTs, and how they interchange, that will be entirely different and interesting at the same time. So I'm just closing all these so we are not going to have too many pages open at once. Again, it's about resources, right? So we see that. We see what the prices points are. We see that, at any given day, if you really want to hit a high price point and have an argument that the prices are too low or prices are not high enough, I would beg to differ. so that people can see the different price points if again they chose to participate. This is really all about level of interest. I'm part of the 98% that I don't have discretionary income. I can't throw away money just for the sake of throwing away money, or just buying for the sake of buying. Even though like I said, there's projects I just find amazing, but I have to now focus and go, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to try to develop and improve upon, and doing so, I have to focus where my budget allocates. But it doesn't mean I don't see the value of why these are or where they are. I look at them and go, this makes sense. If I understand the project, if I understand the plan of the game, which is the alien worlds, I understand why these prices are what they are. As I had mentioned, Alien Worlds had created a huge planning spectrum, and they're going to be launching some new news in coming weeks or so, which I just can't imagine what it can be other than the Thunderdome. So you can just imagine what all these tools, especially if you're a person who likes the high numbers, if you're into those high numbers, but you also can see how many actually exist. So if I look at where we just had it here, there we go. This is only maximum of 128. That's it. 128 of this particular sword for a volume of about 7,000 people. So you kind of figure out the odds where that's concerned, and that's what you want to see. You want to see people are interested in the platform, which is very, very important. They're engaged in it, very, very important. Secondary, then they bring the values then being built from that. It's not being built prior. Everything else has to be built on interest and participation and willing parties. Even Street Fighter, even though Street Fighter now has a name for itself, when it first came on board, I remember the first cartridge, the first play place. That's how old I am. It had to build interest. It had to build traction and momentum. Now it's just ingrained. Now everyone knows. The majority of people know Street Fighter. Okay, so everyone's familiar. But even then, in this new market, it has to kind of rebuild itself as well. So that's where we're standing at. So if we look at DApp now Explorer, and we look at the markets within a DApp ecosystem itself, and you can see that these are the games. There's pretty many games that are there in the eco market. So I've only touched on two, possibly a third coming on board, that has shown the potential to move forward, and like I said, with complete interest that I have right now. Crypto Dynasty, this is played on I think the Wacom wallet, if I believe. Imagine you're earning your EOS. I don't know this game. I can't say it's a wrong game. I'm just not familiar with it, right? Prospectors, very good game. EOS Racing, this is the one that's been interesting to hear about. But I believe this is again in the Wacom wallet, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look more into this. I've heard about it, but I haven't played it to give you much information. But you can see where all these different aspects are moving along. Now, if I look at Wax, so you see where Alien, Upland is there, still number one, bringing in the user base of now just passing the 10K mark. If we look at Wax, again, this is all part of the EOS system here. You see Alien Worlds there. Koba Blocks have made entry. They've dropped slightly. Well, that's another thing we could tap on a bit more. RPlanet, we're going to do a slight tidbit of a hint on. Prospectors is still there. Wax Tycoon, Dark Country, Cogs, Alchemy Expert. Again, some of these games I don't play, but you can see where there's a user base in place. Certain volume, some are hits, some are misses, but these are all relatively new. This is just as I mentioned, some of these games are not even 3 months old. So if you're a person who's expecting to rush it and look for quick gains for the sake of quick gains, likely you'll be disappointed. But I'm just trying to bring in the basics. I'm trying to help new players or new people of interest into this different landscape understand where the markets fly. So if I had to go back now to the art part, I didn't show enough of the art, and I should have done that. And because we looked at a lot of the just for the sake of the game element, but here are some of the art pieces that are now coming into play. Once these become more popular, once people feel that this makes them content and it makes them happy, you will see more of these elements come into fruition. So if I look at I'll go to lowest price right now, and I want to do details, and you can look at market. You can see where the market has been. So this was launched, I believe, at 17th of October. It's kind of spiked slightly. It is what it is. You can get a sense of what's going on. If there's a particular piece of artwork that you like, if you find somebody else, like I said, they're bringing in more art elements and art projects as well. Let me see if we find this person here. No, this is the wax card. I want to figure something. To horse as a game. I don't want anything game base. This is the fortune cookie, which is pretty funny. So here you go. We have fortune cookies. Teach their own. You got cyberpunks on the other one. As I discussed about the whole NFT market and whole NFT, it's really, really, really what people find funny, humorous, what they like, what they don't like. Who am I to say if it's something's worthwhile or not worthwhile? That's not up to me. If we look at different elements here, interesting pieces here, different style, but again, discern consistency. Let me see what their details was. So here's a second in the icon series for online browser game. There you go, maximum 20. So it's really something you have to, again, it's taking time and doing the research and saying, okay, what would I like? Is there something I do like? So we're gaining a little more understanding on this whole ecosystem. I'm going to look at a NewDex, and the reason why I bring the NewDex from the Alcor again is the NewDex offers all these different aspects of how you can trade the EOS or wax, or even I think Trillium's here. I'm not sure. I did not double check. Let me see if it is. Yeah, they didn't enter in there yet. But wax is. So wax is there, but not the Trillium yet. There's other ones. Let me see if I don't think they're there yet. No, not yet. But waxes. But so you can see all these other coins. Some of them are part of the DeFi, decentralized finance. Another network can do these chain transaction, peer-to-peer transaction, exchange transactions. Just a new market, and again, where the fees as well are not significantly outrageous and completely there to kind of break the bank. So we touched on the EOSIO umbrella, where now we looked at underneath the umbrella, we have a bit of understanding on the resource management portion of EOS and how to kind of help prepare for those transactions if you are having trouble just always look into it and see where your account, if you will, stands. If you're looking for to build on that account, you want to be able to add a bit of wax. So it's always good to have a bit more wax as you if you plan to build your wallet, or then maybe split your wallet if need be, and then share those resources differently. There's so many different options there that you can apply and utilize. So these are things to watch and do. And now we're going to move gradually on to now the spin-off of all this. So here I show, and this is going to be a very small tidbit because we're going to get into bigger element, which is Upland and what's coming up in Upland. But they're all going to be interlocked somehow, somewhere. All this is going to be one huge mashup, and I'm just throwing in some details moving along. So here's atomic asset, or say here's wax. Here's a wax world of worlds. Everything's here. Everything's bouncing around the wax system, and you have these assets. I have my inventory. I can go into my inventory and say, okay, this is what I have in my inventory. Now I'm going to utilize this inventory, max it all out. What am I going to do with it? It displays differently on different platforms, as I've shown you. But there's certain things I'm not using. Certain items, like if you buy something that is really worth it, and some that are not so much. So here's our planet. Our planet now designed a system, and I think they're probably the first outside of ETH. I think they're probably the first ones that came up with utilizing your NFTs, staking your NFTs. Don't quote me. I'm making an assumption here, but I think they were the first to say we're staking NFTs. You have all these wallets that are sitting there. We need to mine. We need to put resources to help mine and help, if you understand the process of staking, to kind of secure our network. But we need you to stake something and put skin in the game to help do that, to help build this resource. But in turn, we'll give you some of our own currency. So what they created staking. They created stakings for NFTs that kind of submit their application and they get approved for. Now, this is all the NFTs that now can be staked. And when this first began, it was only these two. It was only Tribal Books and Garbage Pail Kids. And right now, they've added their own, which is very important, and we'll get into that a bit more another time, where it was being challenged on the value of how these items are being staked. And then gradually they added more and more and more and more and more. So if I had certain things in my assets, I can put them in stake. Now, people did a mistake of, can't say a mistake, again, part of a certain type of thinking. They bought assets just so they could stake it, so they can hopefully withdraw because the staking percentage was so high to buy more assets. Nothing wrong with it. It worked for a time, but like anything, you can't keep up a certain momentum without bringing in a certain inflationary process, and there's a risk. You can't have things being staked higher value than your own assets that you're trying to create. You can't have high staking percentage, and you're not, and the assets being sold are basically being sold so that they could buy another asset is not part of your game. So you're not helping yourself in doing that. And so they've done their first halving recently, and of course not many people were content about that, but it was necessary. If you're looking to build a game, you're looking for people to help you build a game by, I guess, temporarily donating their assets to help kind of secure the process of these resources being utilized, but it's supposed to be for the game. Now, if people took advantage of it, yeah, there's a minimum of taking advantage. But if people also bought assets for the sake of purely influencing their return, and then they're surprised that the returns are not as high as they anticipated, well, there was no guarantee their returns were going to be that high anyways. It's part of the whole system of trying to deflate the volumes of these currencies or blockchain currencies, not inflate it. And so they did their halving, and which, some people were not happy and some people understood. I chose to be the former, or say the latter, that completely understands it, and I have no issues with it at all. I don't have many assets, as you can see. I don't have assets in every single section here, but I do what I can and see how the game unfolds. They'll be doing their launch tomorrow, so we'll see what happens. Now, moving forward from that is we'll talk about more of what this game means and how all this will take place, but we're not there yet. So that's again another threshold. I want to get more information on how the purchase of the whole process goes after tomorrow. So we've touched on that. Alien Worlds, like I had said, they're bringing in new news in a few days, maybe a few weeks. We have crazy idea where that's going. I'm just thinking it's going to be the Thunderdome and that they're going to implement. So I've been mining, try to build my Trillium base a bit more. I staked, as I had shown on the video the other day. I staked a bit more to the planets that I own, or the land that I own, and so only time will tell what's going to be happening in the next while. Now we've touched on all the few of the many areas that are happening in the ecosystem of EOSIO, and we're now going to touch on Upland. Now, Upland had just recently needed to go through the process of expansion. If you've seen in my previous videos, they had to expand and start to put the process of expansion in place. And this coming Tuesday, not Monday, they had it originally for Monday, but now Tuesday, they're going to be opening up Brooklyn in 2 phases in a gradual stage. So to help with time zones as well, you're going to have the opening in earlier in the day and the opening later in the day as well. So you can imagine they had to open up all the ports or expand all the transport ports to travel to Brooklyn, from the train to airplane. All the ticket areas had to be expanded on, because like you're flying, if you need to go somewhere fast, it's first come first serve on the seats that are available. Again, remember, they're looking at doing real world mechanics in the gameplay. So that's going to be happening. They are looking to bring in Spark, which has then been announced, and how to establish some Spark. And what they're doing this weekend, they're doing a campaign to bring in players to try to gain some Spark value, because that's going to be the basis for building any material, any structure. So you can see here, Tuesday 9 a.m. is going to be the first part of the opening. Certain parts will still be locked. They're going to be revealing the collection that's going to be in Brooklyn. So of course everyone's going to be trying to get the collection. That's going to determine where people are buying. And then the 9 p.m. Purchase point, again, to open up for more time zones. They've increased the capacity for the terminal from 105 to 250, and they're just getting ready for that. They've now done a correction for the FSA, and if the FSA stands for First Fair Start Act, for new players to come on board and be comfortable without being bombarded of a sellout. So much like what's happening in certain other games, where they're limiting the immediacy, where the 2%, if you will, can come in and just buy out everything entirely. So they've now said that even if you have FSA, what was happening prior, the FSA will buy for, say, player B who has a higher net worth, and flip it for a percentage, maybe 15%, 17%, 18%, 20%. Sometimes it was up to even 40%. but they're not holding these assets. They're accumulating their net worth, they're increasing their net worth, but these assets were still being transferred to larger players. So what they're now looking to do is trying to minimize that and try to kind of delay that process, and they're looking to do that for within a week. So you can't, the person who buys a FSA property cannot sell that until can only sell two, and then they have to wait a week before they sell the next two. So they have to hold, and forces everyone to hold their properties a bit more before it becomes a free-for-all, and which was happening. So new players then have a chance to buy in more properties. So excuse me. So you had players. Imagine you have, let's say, a property of only an area of only 10 or 15 properties, and you have 2 or 3 FSA buyers in place. These 10 to 20 properties are FSAs, and you have 3 FSA players. They're buying the property up and they're flipping it quickly so they can buy the next property over. Now let's say player number 4 and 5 comes in. Again, they're new to the game, but there's no area for them to buy because these first 3 players bought everything up, accumulated some net worth. The properties went to the older, more established players, but now the new players have no assets in which to purchase. So it's a bit of a kind of chicken egg benefit loss in a way, because everyone claims we want a free market, but at the same time this free market now hinders growth, and it significantly. So if you have new players that come in, if the process continued as it has or did, then as new players come on board, they're not going to be encouraged to stay. They're not going to wait for the game to figure it out. Okay, let's do this again, and let's wait. They'll move on. So this kind of puts on the brakes. I mean, I was guilty of it too. I would not I would openly admit it. It was a great way for the second economy kind to expand. But then now reviewing it, I can see where it became kind of out of control, because now, yes, you got these new players coming on board and they can't participate, and that's the worst thing. Remember that this is supposed to be for mass adoption, not for exclusive adoption. And if you're looking for mass adoption, you have to try to get as many people on board for the economy to be as healthy as possible. So put it on the brakes is makes sense, and I can understand it. And that's what's going to happen tomorrow with this particular game as well. They're putting on the brakes again to minimize whale purchasing. So there's going to be a delay, I think, between 3 to 5 minutes for every round of purchase. Makes sense. Mass adoption means mass involvement, and you can't have it both ways if one can basically outperform the other. It is what it is. It's one or the other. Simple as that. So let's now look at what's going to be happening in Brooklyn with their event to try to get Spark on board. And let's see once this refreshes. Excuse me, I'm just going to have a bit of water. Now you can see they started this event to try to gain more spark bonus for players. If you have the ability to take advantage of this will be great. If you're already playing, I'm already in New York right now, and I'm not looking to sell any properties in New York. So the first thing is do the treasure hunts in Fresno or San Francisco. I'm not there. Number 2, sell at least 50K of UPX worth of New York property on the market. Don't have interest to sell anything at this point. That's not why I bought them at this particular stage. And then there's a bonus round. Collect the highest proceeds from a standard level treasure hunt prize, and you can receive this percentage of Spark, which is great. Like I said, it helps engage if people need. I mean, I get this whole Spark thing, and it's just not everybody will be able to do it because there's a whole bunch of people that are already in New York. There's some people who have no intention to sell 50K. Some people don't have 50K to sell. of any value. So like anything, something to try, but not everyone will be able to take advantage of it. So now I've landed. I am in Brooklyn. I took the train. So to recap, I was in Fresno. I was helping a player get some UPX and do so much apply as many visits as I can to give them a chance to get to Uplander status. From Fresno, I took a train to San Fran. From San Fran, I took a plane to New York, and from New York, or I should say Manhattan, I took a Manhattan train down South Atlantic train to Brooklyn. So right now, I'm just going to disembark, and you can see right now, I am in Brooklyn with everybody else. We can see the property outlines at this point. So we can see everything right now, but we cannot purchase. So even if I select it, it doesn't tell me the price. It just tells me size. It doesn't tell me the collection. It tells me absolutely nothing. But it's a good way in which not to navigate. So if you're looking, like if I wanted to, I could try to get this property. Will I be able to? It's now just somewhat a race to the finish line or a race to end. It's not going to be the easiest thing to do, because like if anything was of any history before, it's not the easiest thing to navigate in terms of assuring that you can get on the refresh point and you're moving along quickly. So I don't even think you can do street view. Let me see. I wasn't sure if that's even possible, so let's take a look. Oh yeah, you could. So you're able to do some street view, so that's nice. So you're able to do that. So that's good. So that helps a lot. So if you're creating your own list of pros and cons, now what would this be in difference to where everybody is right now, and why would this be a challenge? You have to understand none of these areas are minted, so there's no place for anybody to land on. So even if I wanted to buy, let's say this property here, I can't get to it because nobody owns anything here for me to land on to purchase. So it's almost like follow the leader. The first person who was going to mint it, which had happened in Clovis, I was the first one. I think I was the first one to mint the huge property right at the border between Fresno and Clovis. And everything from there, everyone, that's their landing point. Everyone, so ideally, in its own way, I created enough rent that was fun. This is the same thing that's going to happen here. Nothing here is owned by anybody, and so everyone has to. You have to wait for things to be minted as the process comes along, and then everyone has a landing pad to get to. And it's going to be a slow process, and you're going to have to hope that you get a few of the properties you want. It's almost, think of it like a rush at Boxing Day, the worst example I can think of, but it's the same kind of analogy. Everyone, you have a list of items that you want because everything's on sale, right? But the doors are locked, and everyone's in line, and now you have to wait for the doors to open. And if you're in the back of the line, or wherever you are in the line, you have to wait for everyone else to move along. Once everyone's inside, now you just gotta hope you scramble enough to get to these spots and beat the next person that's there. Not naturally beat them like some of these places are just horrendous, but in theory you're going to try to scramble now to try to get to these locations, and hopefully achieve one of your end goals of buying a property that's on your list, or the property that you want. And that was going to happen here. None of these properties are minted, so there's no landing, and we just have to hope that you can get to a location and go, okay, yes, I want to try to get to this spot. And some of these things that you're seeing right here, I can tell you will be the first ones gone, like immediately. And that's assuming if it's available. So I may be clicking this, but these may be locked. It doesn't mean anything. It may be locked out by the game. It may be locked out by the time zone because this is in two halves. There's no way of knowing what is and what isn't. And now the other thing that will be very beneficial for new players now coming on board, they will have a choice of where they want to start. Now, honestly, I'm not sure if that's the best way to do it, because if a place is sold out like Clovis, is that really the best place to start? I might have to put that in my commentary, so that they have an understanding. I think it will help new players determine where to start if we give them like a percentage of what's been sold already, a percentage, an average of what the cost value is. So then it's a little bit more of a decision factor versus just select a city and go. So they go to Clovis. If there's nothing for them to buy in Clovis, then now they have to travel somewhere to get to a market that suits them. I don't know. It's a hit and miss. We'll see where that pans out. This is an interesting shape, but again, is that going to be available? And what are you? Let's see. No, interesting. Looks like it's a strip of row house condos. Awkward. Now, if you guys know anything about Brooklyn, and you know anything where it's kind of unique and interesting, please let me know. I'll be looking for some feedback and tell me, okay, this is a really good spot. You should really find this part. This is really cool. Hey, your feedback would be great, and I appreciate your feedback. I mean, follow, share. The more information that helps me understand what the requests are for certain questionnaire or reviews, it'll be great. As I said, this is just going to be an expansion. This is just a beginning. There's other ideas that are coming into fruition, and your insight, your feedback will help determine some of these projects moving along. So I hope this makes sense. I'll be doing a little bit more research on some of these properties some more. I'm not going to bore you here because, again, this is all scoping. This is everyone's navigating around. They're out there playing the treasure hunts in San Fran or Fresno. New York's going to open up the treasure hunts as well pretty soon. So then if players are in New York, they can play there as well. It's really going to be an interesting kind of spread in these 4 cities right now over the next time. And as I said, this is just a 5th city. Sorry, let me correct that. So we had San Fran, we have New York, Manhattan, we have Fresno, Clovis, and now Brooklyn. So 5 cities. My mistake. And again, if you're part of the Wax community, I did a collection of 3 of the starter cities, the first 3 cities that are on board. I brought it all together. Go through and hopefully you could add to that contribution. It'll help me out in terms of further development in the game of Wax and EOS, and eventually be growing this base and doing some auctions for other pieces of artwork and other projects that I look to expand upon. But until then, until we get to the next craziness of EOS, and hopefully by next week we'll see if any more news has happened, what has happened to Brooklyn. Take a mental image of what you see here, because this will be vastly different after Tuesday, guaranteed. And if you're not on board already, this is the time to do so, because this is growing and continuing to grow. As I had mentioned in the previous video. They're going to be doing another East city, a possible West city. This is a what's considered a mid-tier city, so it's price point similar to San Fran. Um, not sure if they're bringing in another low-tier city. That's been in discussion, but you can imagine where it's heading. So definitely get on board if you haven't. If it's not your thing, if you're not sure why this is such a big deal, there's a lot of notes and articles in the past of where they're going for 2021. But you can always send me a comment. Let me know what's happening, why I like what I like, or what is it that you have a concern about, and I'll definitely try to pass on some feedback. So until next time, take care, stay safe, and we'll touch base soon. Thank you.